on LinkedIn Live. I'm delighted that you've been able to dial in, and today we have with us a CEO, a TEDx speaker, the author of Purposeful Hustle, the author of other books like I'm a Girl of Color, I'm a Boy of Color, a podcast broadcaster, including Uplifting Impact, and a notorious bridge builder. So I'm delighted to welcome Deanna Singh. Deanna's earned a Bachelor in Arts in Urban Studies from Fordham University, a Juris Doctorate from Georgetown University, a Master's in Business Administration from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and a certification in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion from Cornell University. And Deanna is internationally recognized for her work in leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're going to talk a little bit about driving change through the workplace inclusion. And Deanna, welcome. And it's an absolute honor and pleasure for me to have this discussion and be with you today on LinkedIn Live.
Well, thank you so much, John. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm so happy to be here on Science LinkedIn Live too, because Science really is just such an amazing organization, and your emphasis on, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's really an honor to be able to be with you and to be with the team.
Fantastic. Good. Okay. So a few questions, if that's okay, that we'll go through, and I guess where I wanted to start, and you're infamous or renowned for your bridge building and the extensive work you've done around bridge building. So that metaphor of linking sort of uncommon cultures together. Do you want to sort of talk a little bit about that and just sort of tell us sort of what made it your life's work?
Sure. So I appreciate you saying that. I think I'm still trying to get my bridge building certification, because it's a lifelong long certification process. But I do really think that being able to build bridges is the number one asset that I can bring into the work that I do. And what I mean by building bridges is being able to connect and build relationships with people who come from a wide variety of different backgrounds. And as I shared with the Science team earlier, I really come at this from both a personal and a professional perspective. From a professional perspective, it is the number one thing that I see great organizations and great leaders doing, and that is really bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion into who they are as an organization. And then I would tell you that from a personal side, being a child of an African-American woman and an Asian Indian man, being from those two East and West cultures, I also know the power of that, because I am a true reflection of those two cultures coming together. So I understand, I feel like I am a bridge in some ways. And so I understand what can happen when you have that as part of who you are and what you do.
Okay, absolutely. So sort of follow on from that. So, if I want to be a bridge builder, or some of our viewers and listeners, want to be a bridge builder, what advice would you give us, and what are the steps we take, and maybe some of the behaviors and qualities that we need to exhibit?
Absolutely. So I think that there's a couple of things that you do if you want to be a bridge builder. The first thing is you come to the work with humbleness. If you come to the work thinking, oh, I already know everything about this, I know exactly how I'm going to build this bridge. It's going to go like this, and it's going to go from here to here, and that's it. That's how we're going to do it. You are going to find that you build a bridge to nowhere, because a lot of times, one of the number one things a bridge builder has to do is be humble enough to say, I don't know exactly what would be the way to create this bridge and to make this connection. So I'm going to come at this with a sense of, what would this be, right? A sense of humbleness and a sense of curiosity. I think the second thing you have to do is you have to listen. So a lot of times we have people who are like, I know the answer to this, I can solve this, or I want to make this happen so bad. They're so enthusiastic about it that they just want to go ahead and get right to action. And they don't want to take the time to actually stop and do some listening. And so the second thing I would say is, how do you create opportunities for you to listen? Whether that's in what you read, what you listen to, what you watch, who you talk to, but how do you really create opportunities to listen? Because the listening component is how you are creating a bridge to the other space. If you don't know what's happening on the other side, you haven't listened well enough to what's happening on the other side, your bridge won't land in the right spot. It'll miss its target. So I think that's the second thing that I would say every bridge builder needs to have. So humbleness and curiosity, and the ability to listen and to see other people.
And in sort of going back to the theme of our talk, the driving change. I mean, how does this then link through to change, innovation, re-engineering the business? I mean, how do you make the connection for us between, if you like, the bridge building and how that, for example, will help with innovation, which is obviously something that every business needs to be doing, particularly in these times.
So if you think about this, even just like play with this analogy a little bit, if you were on an island all by yourself and the only resources that you can use in order to create a product or create a new idea or create a solution are the things that are on your island, you're going to have some limitations. The minute you are able to create a bridge to another island that has its own resources and has its own ideas and its own spaces, just by nature of being able to create that bridge, that ability to go back and forth, you have now doubled the things or tripled, quadrupled, right? Who knows how much you've added to what you are able to play with as you're building something new. So the analogy, I think, works really, really well because it's the same thing, right? When we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, when you're able to create bridges to other places, what you're actually doing is you are opening yourself up to have more ideas, more resources, more people who can help you achieve the mission that you have in front of you. So absolutely, bridge building is critical to innovation.
Okay, and so the people, you might be a great bridge builder, but you're in an organization or you're working for a manager who maybe doesn't quite get it. So what are some of the things, how would you approach that? If there's some resistance maybe from your manager or some of your colleagues, so you're all into the idea of bridge building and you've got the humbleness and you're open-minded, but you're getting that resistance from other people. So what are some of the techniques maybe you can look at? How do you sort of fight that resistance, for want of a better phrase?
So I think one of the things, whenever we trace resistance, right, one of the big things that's at the core of resistance is fear. And so one of the things that I think is really important is just to try and understand and be empathetic. One of, people say, well, this person's resisting. Well, have you tried to create a bridge to that person? Because bridge making is not just about making bridges to the people you want to have bridges with. It's about making bridges to all kinds of different people, even people who might have a different opinion about something you feel really passionate about. So I would say the first thing is really trying to understand what might be the underlying fear or what might be the challenge that person has when they're thinking about this idea of creating more inclusive spaces. So that's one thing, is seek to understand. The second thing that I would say is really, really important is that if you have a leader who says, you know what, I'm resistant to this, and one of the reasons I'm resistant to this is because we already have so much work. We can't add more things to what we're doing. Is to be able to step back and really help your leader see how diversity and equity and inclusion can be included in what you're already doing, not an add-on, but an enhancement. And I think that's another really critical thing that works a lot. And I would say the third thing that works a lot is make the business case, right? Sometimes the moral case, and I am like a believer that there is a very strong moral case for what we're doing. But if you're there and you're a person that you're trying to convince isn't really buying the moral case, doesn't really see it, isn't connected to it, then try and think about what are the avenues that you can use to help them see the benefit. And one of those avenues may be thinking about it from a business perspective.
Okay, yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. I think that ties into, one of the things I know when we were speaking earlier, and it's really important within science. We talk about our values, and we have our values first, which is fairness, integrity, respect, sincerity, and transparency. And I think you've made the point, and maybe you sort of highlight that of when you have a dilemma or you're not quite sure, or there's a challenge about building the bridge, or there's that challenge reaching out, the values piece becomes really important. I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the values piece is the critical component, right? Yeah. Because here's the thing about diversity, equity, inclusion work. It's hard. There are moments where you're going to be like, wow, it would just be so much easier for us to hire somebody who looks like everybody else on the team. Wow, it would just be so much easier for us not to, talk to somebody else from a different country or a different space. It would just be so much easier if we just, right? There are going to be those moments. And I think that in those moments when you're up against ease, or maybe it's efficiency, or maybe it's comfort, that it's those moments where your values become really important. Because when you understand, like, this is bigger than just who I am, it's bigger than this one moment, it's bigger than this project. It really is the essence of who I am, which is what values are about. It's the essence of who we are as an organization. It allows you, even in those most challenging moments, to make decisions that really lead to greater inclusivity.
And I think you had a lovely example you use going right back to your family and how that values piece really sort of worked through. I don't know if you want to share that or.
Oh, absolutely. So in my family, one of the things that I had the opportunity to talk about is that we often had a lot of people staying in our home. We had a 3-bedroom ranch, small square footage, but we'd have on average more than 30 people living in this home and at any given time. And so it created all kinds of, different things. And I know one of the challenges was, are we at capacity? Right. So one of the questions that my parents would get asked a lot are we okay? Is this capacity? Which is a very fair question. I mean, 1.5 bathrooms doesn't go that far when you have 30 people in one space, all trying to get out the house at the same time. So are we at capacity? And my father, who just has filled me up with, I think, so much wisdom, right? But this is one of the pieces I hold really, really dear, is he would always retort when someone came and approached him with this. He would always say, well, what's more important? Helping somebody thrive or your comfort? It's a very simple question, right? What's more important? I remember he posed that question to me too, especially when I was a teenager and I wanted to spend more time in the bathroom, right? What's more important? Your comfort or helping a family thrive, helping them have a safe place, helping them get their feet on the ground? What's more important? And he always said, one of the kind of the things that I really try and impress upon my own children, and I think it's something I try to live by. He always said, if you measure your success by what you do, about how successful you are, then you have a very narrow definition of success. And it's not really the right one. The way that you measure your success is by how those around you are doing. That's the better way to think about success. And so as a family, as a unit, that became one of our great values. And so when I think about service, when I think about Seva, right? When I think about those things that really are important in our family, important in what we do, it always comes back to that. And how could I not be inclusive? How could I not value diversity? How could I not value equity when I understand that my success is not tied to who I am? It's really tied to how those around me are doing.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic example. It makes a lot of sense.
Thanks for letting me share that, John, too. I hope my dad gets a chance to hear this so he knows I was listening to him.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be very proud. So I suppose, just in the current climate, clearly the last sort of 6-7 months have been a pretty strange time for all of us, and we're all working from home. So I suppose a couple of questions. One, does that make it harder to get the D&I message out and the sort of your work, and or does it actually throw up more opportunities for organizations to really embrace and drive through this workplace inclusion?
So I am just the type of person who's always like a glass half full, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm sensing it.
So I always think like challenge, like amazing. That's an opportunity for us to be able to think about how we can do things differently and how we can do things better. And I think that COVID-19 really provides an excellent opportunity for us to push a restart button, for us to start to think about the things that we held to be incredibly true, right? Like, this is a truth. In order for us to get work done, everybody has to come to the office. There are a lot of companies that believed that without a doubt that needed to happen. And what their people have been able to prove is that not only is that a false assumption, but it actually was something that was holding them back, right? Holding their ability to move forward back. Now, I don't want to pretend, John, that there's not challenges. There are definitely challenges. This is hard. We are having to pivot on I feel like, daily basis and, re-engineer what we want to do and how we do it. But as we're doing that, we have the opportunity to do some of the things that we didn't do 10, 15, 20 years ago when we first put these practices in place. And that is layer on, what does it look like to be more inclusive? So it's almost like, what an amazing opportunity for us to say, that's the way we always did things. We literally cannot do things the way we always did things. So as we design how we're going to do things moving forward, let's do it in a more inclusive way. And so I have found that this has just been a fascinating time watching organizations re-engineer the way they think about things.
Yeah, and I think certainly, yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think to follow on to that, you look at as we sort of struggle to keep everybody engaged and to reach out to all our communities, then it's a really good example. It's a really good opportunity to hear from people who would normally get a voice and maybe don't have the same opportunity to have the connect across the organization. So that's absolutely right. So there's a question that's come through. So how would one respond to resistance to change and get out of the comfort zone?
So getting out of your comfort zone, I love this question. And I think that people sometimes are a little disappointed with my answer, but I'm going to give it because I believe in it fully.
Go for it.
So when people ask me this question, like, how do I get out of my comfort zone? Oftentimes they're expecting me to say, do this big, grand thing, right?
Yep.
Jump on a plane and go across the country, sell all you have and go live in a place that big things. And I'm not knocking anybody for doing those big things, but I will tell you, John, that it's actually really small things that can make a huge difference. And one of the biggest things that you can do is actually try to diversify the inputs that you're putting into your brain. So that can be done as simply as listening to new podcasts from voices that are not part of your normal place where you get information, going onto LinkedIn Live and watching an amazing John, to have a conversation with an expert in a field maybe you don't know that much about. It means reading a book or watching a movie, having a conversation with a coworker that maybe you don't normally cross paths with, but you set up a time to do a virtual coffee with. It's those little bitty things that we think, oh, that's not that big. That's not change. That's not huge. That's not changing policy. That's not, starting an NGO. Those things are important. I will die doing those things, right? And supporting those things. But it's in these small spaces where we really push out our own mind and the inputs that we have that make the most transformation for us as individuals. And once we make those transformations, once we start to see, because we're listening to more podcasts and we're watching more videos and once we start to see more women as leaders, guess what? It's not so hard to hire a woman as a leader. Once we start to see, right? And so those small things actually lead to a lot of large growth and a lot of large opportunity.
Okay, absolutely. So I think maybe you had a couple of questions that you wanted to ask me.
Absolutely. So I think one of the big things that I just wanted to know is, what is the future of science? When you think about this diversity, equity, and inclusion space, where do you see the company going, and why is this important?
Yeah, and so I think we absolutely subscribe to the view and the need to innovate, and the fact that it's going to give us growth and all the metrics and everything we see. So I think for us, our journey in the future and what we're trying to do is, we talk about values first. We have this agile framework, which basically is our overriding strategy for the business around ambition, growth, investment, leadership, and execution. And within that, D&I, and then we have an embrace program really sits under that. So there's lots of things we're doing, and I really loved your comment you made earlier about it's the small things. So one of the most successful things I think we've launched in the company is we have this program called Inclusion Ambassadors. So they're normal people in the business, they're volunteers, they're in all the geographies, and the whole idea of Inclusion Ambassadors is that they're doing little nudges. So it's the little things, it's the ideas, it's the why didn't we change the banner at the bottom of an email? Why didn't we mention, and we had a great initiative where we sort of put diversity matters at the bottom of our email signatures, or it's little things, doing changing our recruitment ads so that they reflect more the diversity of the organization. And these aren't big programs, they're not structured things, but they're things that individuals can take on and drive. So this idea of inclusion ambassadors and nudges is a big thing in our business, and it's been really successful. We're doing something called a Take 5 program, which is kind of these cadence email service series, which is really to provide inclusive leadership tips and kind of exercises to help us understand around inclusive leadership. So things like doing the unconscious bias test, though, all the things that again will just help, to your point earlier, raise awareness and challenge a little bit the comfort zone that we'll all tend to operate in. We have a Dni calendar, so we're aware of events around the world and things that are happening. So again, that's sort of giving some focus, and then very specific things. So if we look at our recruitment, we use a product called Tap Recruit, which is now enabling us to remove any gender bias and discriminatory language from our job ads. And again, that's a very tangible thing, but we're seeing the benefit of that when we're going out to market, because immediately, instead for an engineering role where we might have had 80-20 split, we'll have a 50-50 split between gender, and that then immediately opens up the opportunities. And then what we're also trying to do is kind of bring that all together and have a sort of a dashboard of metrics, and absolutely we're trying to put together the data that we can measure at the moment, and then build up on that some of the metrics that will enable us to track the progress. So those are just a few things that are sort of happening in our business.
John, those are not a few things. That's a lot of things that we're doing. And I think that that's so amazing. As an organization, one of the things that I have a lot of people who will call me for coaching for is they'll call and they'll say, how do we get our senior leaders on board? And I'm so happy to see that Science has that support, right? That the senior leaders are already on board, that they really understand what's going on. The other question that I will get quite a lot is, what happens when the senior leaders really, really get it? But we don't know that the people who are working in our field, or, who are on our teams, understand the importance, or they're taking on those leadership roles. And it seems like at Science, you've got both groups really activated and really moving forward. That is amazing.
I think what's certainly from where I sit, what's really nice is, on the one hand, we discuss it at a board level, and the board, our independent directors get it and understand the importance of it and push us on about it and want to know what's happening and what we're doing. But then we've got this grassroots sort of with the inclusion ambassadors, and that feels really good, because it's we're coming at it, if you like, it's not just our Dni champion, it's not just one or two people, it's really sort of across the business, which I think is hopefully a good thing for us.
Absolutely. One of the things that we chatted about is that every single person, no matter what your title is, no matter what organization you are, I know we have a lot of people from Science, but we also have a lot of guests who are joining our conversation. That doesn't really matter. It's not that gives you the power to be able to create bridges, right? It's not that gives you the power to be able to have relationships and to be able to create things that didn't exist previously. I think that what gives you that power, what gives you that ability to do that, is just a personal desire of a set of values, right? And a goal, a passion for trying to find the humanity all around us. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things, because once people realize that, wow, the amazing things that can transpire. You think about some of the greatest stories and greatest opportunities and greatest innovations that have happened in the world. It's been because somebody said, you know what? I don't know what's going on across the water over there. That water looks a little scary. It looks a little treacherous. I'm not maybe the greatest swimmer, but I'm going to go and scout it out. Yep. I'm going to see what's going on across that other side of the water, and I'm going to do it in a way that's graceful, and I'm going to do it in a way that really allows for people to want to also create their part of the bridge, so we can connect it in the middle. And then we're going to invite other people to join it too. And I think, wow, just the power, right? It's a metaphor. It's really the power of what can happen when that's the premise.
And so back to those common themes of curiosity, humbleness, and just but also being prepared to sort of take a bit of a risk and challenge the status quo. So there's if I may, there's another question that's come through, which is I guess the comment is that we've been talking a lot about sort of people driving engagement and the work and some of the changes in the workplace environment, but what about technology interventions, and which technology interventions do you believe, and I'll have a go at answering the question maybe as well, are creating some of the change and are enabling Dni?
Well, I would love for you to start with that. I think I have some ideas and some things that I've seen that are effective, but I'd love to hear what you all are thinking.
Okay, yeah. So good question. I think just something like this, and I think the platforms and StreamYard, LinkedIn Live, all these things are really helping, aren't they? Because and every Teams call. I mean, I think, we've adopted across the organization Microsoft Teams. What a fantastic platform for, and we talk about it being a collaboration platform, but actually it's just a very inclusive platform because everybody's on the same, literally on the same page, the same window, but also everyone can share their desktop and they can share their presentation equally quickly and easily. And unless, so again, it's a great leveler, and it just gives that accessibility to, to global teams. So I'd say things like that become really important. I'd say, what we're doing, in terms of, I think also the wider social media becomes really important in this. So, the messaging and the communication and the consistency. So, you have your values, we've got, what the business is trying to do in terms of our vision and mission, and then it's reinforcing that through social media. And again, that becomes a great way of people understanding, well, yeah, absolutely, I'm on board with this. I get the message, and I feel included because I can be part of transmitting that, the good things that the business is doing. So there's a few thoughts from my side. I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you've hit a number of the ones that I think are really powerful. One of the big things is that people have a microphone now, and you can see that people are actually using that microphone and using these platforms, whether it be, social media, whether it be hosting their own webinars, right? That they're using their microphones to make sure that they're creating knowledge and providing opportunities for people to access knowledge. I know that one of the things that we are going to be doing with our children, we have an 8 and 11-year-old, two little boys. But one of the things that we're going to be doing with our children is actually allowing for them to take Spanish this semester, but not just with their local Spanish, class, but they're going to be taking Spanish with somebody across seas. And we actually already started the program. It's amazing. But that wasn't something that was really part of what we were thinking about as a potential opportunity. Whereas now, that is something that we're thinking about. Like, wow, I wonder if we could do this, if we can open up space, right? And so all of a sudden, I mean, we were already part of this, information age, like that is what we are living through right now. But I think that it's making it even more accessible. So that's one huge thing. Is everybody has a microphone. There's all these different platforms that we can go to. The knowledge is much more accessible, and our ability to create those bridges, and have just really meaningful relationships. I think about my own team. It's not as big as the science team, right? But I think about my own team. We have somebody in India, somebody in the Philippines. We have somebody in Florida. We have we have people kind of all over the place, and we can all come onto one screen in a way that we wouldn't have been able to facilitate if we didn't have these technology platforms. So again, I think that it's going to open us up, right? It's going to open us up to more talent. It's going to open us up to thinking about how talent shows up in a different kind of way. And I think that it really is going to allow us to be, I cannot wait in 5 years from now to hear what my kids are making fun of us for doing, right? Because they're going to be like, we have this new technology that does, I can't even imagine it, right? Whatever it does. And it's going to be because of something that resulted from the experiences that we're having right now in this moment.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, and back to where we started the conversation around building bridges, I guess what the technology is enabling us to do is just build lots more very different types of bridges. And it's just, in previous, I guess pre-COVID, and certainly without the technology, we were restricted in how those bridges looked, physically and geographically. And now those barriers aren't there, and it makes it very exciting. And I think, particularly, looking from a business perspective, the opportunities for innovation and the opportunities for collaboration around ideas just become amazing. I mean, it's sort of what was starting, really gives huge opportunity for us all.
And I just want to applaud Scient for making this, using this platform as an opportunity, not just to grow your own internal team and provide professional development there, but also to think about, I think this is one of the other kind of great things about technology, is that we can say, like, this is something that we're trying to train our team on, but this is also something that we value so much as an organization. We want all the people that are part of our network to be able to experience. And I think It's that kind of thinking, right? Not so insular, not so small, but this broader building thinking that really is going to transform and form what our world looks like tomorrow.
Great. And I think, I'm just looking at the clock coming up to 30 minutes. So I think that's probably a really good place to stop. And thank you so much for the conversation. For everyone who dialed and listened, thank you for taking the time. It's been a great pleasure. And hopefully we'll get the chance to continue the conversation. So
thank you.
Keep building bridges. Thank you. Okay.